Hello, everyone. Happy Easter. It's Easter Sunday, and I thought it would be a good time for me to sit down and do a quick check-in with you. I was able to put up some new stuff in the Moodle, I think earlier last week, but I didn't send out an email or a video with it, and I meant to get to that right away afterwards, and it just kind of slipped by me. So I know many of you have already turned in your revisions to your conclusion section, which is great. I'll start working on those. And then we have just a couple more things to get us through the semester and get you on your way to graduation this summer, which I hope you guys are all looking forward to. All right, so I have our Moodle pulled up here, and I want to make sure that you see a couple things that are going to be due. The first thing is your revisions. I put on there April 3rd. As you guys know, I'm pretty loose and generous with deadlines, so that's just kind of a guideline. We just want to make sure these papers are still on their way to be ready to fully upload by finals week. So that's the first thing on the checklist for week 11 and 12. And then I have an assignment to turn in an edited action research paper with track changes and the editing checklist due by April 15th. So I wanted to show you quick what I was expecting with that. I'm going to open up the editing checklist that I uploaded earlier and show you what that looks like. All right, so I put this together. This is the first time I've used this editing checklist, but I based it on some things that I'm still seeing in some of your papers, and also some things that I've just seen in the past as things that have slipped by people. And I really want you to really do the last and final copy edit to this paper rather than me, so that what is uploaded to the library website at the end of the semester is your final copy edit. It's your final paper. It's not me having the last word on what it looks like, it's you having the last word on what it looks like, and that's really important to me, and I hope it is to you as well. So these are some guidelines for that. The first thing that you probably have never done in a copy edit before is a backwards and forward citation checking. So I'm going to make sure to show you how to do that on here. The directions are here, but I'm also going to show you in Word in just a second. And then there's also a number of other things that are much simpler to do and you've probably done before. They're pretty self-explanatory. One thing I'm still seeing in papers is no page numbers with quotes. So if you are directly quoting a source, you have to have a page number. So if you're putting a direct quote with quotation marks, the citation that follows that should say last name, comma, year, comma, p dot space, and then the page numbers that it falls under that you got it from. Double checking headings, I'm not seeing too many issues with that, but make sure you're using that blue book one more time to double check your headings. Paragraph indents, all paragraphs except for the abstract should be indented one tab, which should look like 5 to 7 spaces, so make sure they're even, that you don't have 2 tabs on one paragraph and 1 tab on another. Tables and figures should be formatted correctly with annotations, the n equals the number. Make sure there are no vertical lines in any tables in APA. I've got just a couple still that are still looking like that when I was reading through the conclusion. And, you know, because I always do like a really quick edit above as well. So that just won't work. You have to get those vertical lines out of there. Whenever you're referring to figures and tables, the F is capitalized and the T is capitalized. So if anytime you're referring to like figure 1, the F in that in your text should be capitalized. And I'm going to show you a really quick way to go through and edit for most of these things, but I do want you to do a full read through as well. There's still some differences with affect and effect, there, and apostrophe usage. I want you to go ahead and try to figure that out on your own. If you really if you're really stumped on a sentence and you need to email me, I will email back and tell you what the correct way is. But at this point, I don't want to be giving any grammar lessons. I want you guys to be doing the work to figure out which is appropriate for the sentence that you're using. Also making sure you're looking at, do I need that comma? Or do I need a comma that's not there? Most of the time what I'm seeing in the papers actually is extra commas that don't need to be there. So just making sure you're checking with that, and taking out all my old comments as well as all your old comments. So what we're uploading at the end is a final, complete, beautiful copy of your paper. Once in a while, I'm still seeing some extra spaces after periods and extra lines after paragraphs. Make sure there's only 1 space in between a period and the next sentence, and make sure that there is only one line in between sections. So it should read like all even spacing. Same thing with the reference page. The reference page should look like all the lines and all the entries are the same space apart. There shouldn't be an extra space in between entries, and that should all be double spaced with any line after the first being indented. And of course, our big thing with APA writing that we've been focusing on since the very start of this research sequence is clear and concise writing. So please take out any extra words that don't need to be there, that don't change the meaning of the sentence. One thing that almost always makes a paper better is if you try to cut down the word count. So pretend that I've given you in your whole paper, I say you could do the word count, and I'll show you how to do that in Word in a second. You'll see the word count, it's going to be high, and I say, okay, I want you to cut 500 words before you turn this paper in. It will almost always make your paper better as you take out those extra words that don't need to be there. Okay, so let's look on an example here, and I can show you how to do some of these things in case you don't know. Let's open up the example paper. All right. So let's see. Actually, I'm going to make that a little smaller so it's in here. All right, so for the backwards and forwards citation editing, this is probably something new to you. You need to go through and make sure that every single citation that is in your reference page is, oops, let's see if I can get there. Still loading. Every single reference that's in your reference page is somewhere in your paper. So a really nice way to do this is to use the search and find tool in Microsoft Word. So say Tang. I want to make sure Tang is not only in my reference page, but I'm actually citing it somewhere in the document. So I can actually search in the document for Tang, and it will show me where it's come up, and I can actually scroll through if it was cited more than once. Looks like it was. I can scroll through the different places it is in this document. Okay. So I also need to go through my paper and make sure that I've done the citations the other way, that every citation in the text of my paper is also in the reference page. And so what I have done with that before is I actually print out my reference page, and then I go through and I get to the first reference, and then I double check my reference page that it's in there, and just kind of do that manually. I think it's easier if you print it out so you can just look right next to you if it's in there as you're scrolling through your paper. But it needs to go both ways. Everything that's in your text needs to be in your reference page. Everything that's in your reference page needs to be in your text. So the search button can also help us with a lot of other editing things that we have. So say I figured out that I spelt Tang's name wrong, and I did it throughout the whole paper. So I could search for Tang, and then this one is showing a little bit different, and I could replace it with, so I could search for Tang and I could replace it with Tang, and that would replace all of them, and I would plus replace all, and that would replace all, and it would tell me how many different times it had to change that name. Same thing with double spaces. I've found I can do this as well. So if I do space, space, I can replace it with one space, and it usually works. So 90 replacements. So let's see. So there shouldn't be any double spaces after the periods. So she had a lot still on there. Let's see what else. If I wanted to make sure I'm using effect and effect appropriately, I could find all the effects and go through them that way. I wouldn't want to replace them all because I would want to look at every single one of them to make sure I'm using it correctly. So this find and replace can really help me look for specific copy edits that need to be done. Even if I want to look at apostrophe uses, I can even find all the apostrophes that I've used. So that can help me in that way. Your paper still does need a final read through. I would recommend by both yourself and by someone who's never read your paper before. That would be super helpful. A spouse or a partner, a really good friend who's willing to do it if you buy them coffee. But someone who's just never looked at your paper. And what I'm looking for when they are reading through it is not necessarily any big ideas, but any copy edits. You and I have read through this paper so many times that those little mistakes go by us just like a flash because we're reading it how we think it's supposed to be read. And we miss, our brains miss some mistakes sometimes. And so that's what we're looking at, those little mistakes for someone else to read it for us and for you to read it as well one more time through. Just a few of you need to look through your research questions because you kind of tweaked your research questions along the way and make sure that they're consistent throughout. So that's what I'm hoping you will spend the next couple weeks on. I'm going to give you a couple weeks to do this before we move into our final project for the semester. And that's a very, very short, easy project that I'll talk about at the end here as well. I don't want you to stress out. But what I'd like you to do to show that you have done this really careful, thorough copy editing is I want you to do one of two things. I'm going to give you an option. I either want you to go and on that checklist and mark how many errors you had to switch and that you found, or I want you to track changes in Microsoft Word and turn in the track changes document. So if I'm going through and I review, and I'm going to start my copy editing, I can turn track changes on, and then everything I change, like if I take out this 2 here and put in 2, I don't think that's what it would be, but it will track all the changes. So I can see, oh yeah, you went out and you took out a lot of extra words that you didn't need to have in there. Or I can see that you went in and you really looked at those citations and made sure that the page numbers were in there. And I can kind of see what you did. So I'd like you to either turn in your copy edit worksheet with how many mistakes or errors you had to fix under each of those categories, or I'd like you to turn in the track changes, or you can do both. I think the directions say to do both, but I'm kind of thinking this is for a participation grade. I don't want it to stress anybody out. So if you're even willing to do one or the other, that's just fine with me. And that'll work for your participation online for these next couple weeks. Okay. So there's a place to put in that track change paper or your editing worksheet. And then the final project is going to be a creative, my research story creative research project. And I'm going to leave this wide open. And I'll put on a rubric on Moodle as well. I'm hoping that you'll work on your editing first and then just work on this last couple weeks. I'd like it to be something that can help you get ready for pro seminar. So what I'm looking for is a creative way that you can show your classmates how your research ended up, how this whole process ended up, and where you're at now. It can be a video, like I'm doing with you, a webcast. It could be a webcast. It could be a poster you make, a PowerPoint with your voice. It could be a poem. It could be a rap. Whatever you want to do, but really what I'm looking for is some way for you to say, how did this research go from start to finish, from thinking about last June until today, and share with your classmates your research story. And then during finals week, everybody's going to get 2 to look at and to respond to. And it would be great if you had somehow had your face and your voice incorporated into the project. That way, it's been a long time since some of you have seen each other. So that way we can kind of remember what our classmates look like and kind of finish off this kind of community of learners that we started last summer in a way that is nice going forward. So if you see those people at a Cubs game or something like that, you can say hi and remember that you were in research together at Viterbo. So that is my goal for that. I'll put up a rubric with some more specific directions, but for these next couple of weeks, I really, really, really want you to just be focusing on editing this paper. And if you have any questions or concerns along the way, feel free to email me or text or call, and I'll look forward to seeing your edited papers approximately about April 14th-ish. And then we'll move into uploading those creative stories at the end of the month. And then finals week is that first week of May. And that's when, for your final, you'll be looking at someone else's research story and responding to it. Other than that, there's no online participation. I did put up a discussion post for you to ask any questions you have right now about Pro Seminar, because I know last year I had a lot of people really nervous about Pro Seminar. And if I don't have answers to those questions, I'm going to seek out my former students and get answers for you. So I'm running out of time on the Screencast-O-Matic. It's at a 15-minute limit. So I'm going to sign off. But again, if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, feel free to reach out. Happy editing. It's really worth it to spend time on editing. It makes your papers so much better. Okay? Have fun. Bye-bye.